It's 7:01. We're going to allow people 3, 4, 5 minutes to come in, 7:05,
But while we're waiting for people, since you all were so polite to join us early,
on time,
we're going to go ahead and talk about like what we've been doing. So I see some familiar faces in here. Hi, Joan. But I see a lot of new names and stuff. So in case you don't know, I'm Kat. This is my daughter, Jamie, and we are.
Who are we?
Seven Green Sisters New Witches Meetup.
Oh my gosh, you guys, biggest change over the summer. We officially created the New Witch Academy of Modern Magic. That is the school. So I've been teaching witches for a long time, but I officially made a school and classes will be in January. So I'm still building stuff. It's a lot to learn.
So go to the website, New Witches Academy of Modern Magic. And
well, that's what I was going to say. Who are we? We were Seven Green Sisters. That was the name that we all came up with. We literally put pieces of paper in a hat and drew out things that we liked. I made my husband do it. But to really get it going for what we stood for was to pick something that was dedicated towards who we were trying to bring into our circle. And that was New Witches. And I wanted it to sound like school. So it was New Witch Academy. And then it wasn't enough for me, so I added the modern magic because you have other ways of saying magic or being modern. And I'm like, and it flowed for me. So that is who we are now. So we have to say that we're no longer just Seven Green Sisters. We're actually.
Well, I think we're still Seven Green Sisters, but now we have the New Witch Academy of Modern Magic, which is actually going to start its first beginner witch course.
The course. There's only going to be one course for now.
In January. Yeah, that's going to be it. So if you go to that website and you subscribe, you'll get information about.
It's very new. It's not an elaborate website or anything, you guys. Don't expect too much just yet. But
excuse me.
Well, I know Kat's making it all, you guys. She is the maker of all the things. I'm just the one that adds in the knowledge and the lessons and whatever. But we do that together.
Yes.
So
yeah, we do.
So that's what we've been doing. That's our workcation that we do.
Yeah. So it's kind of our evolution from where we were before summer break to where we are now today. We told all of our attendees, we announced it a couple months in advance that we were taking the summer off so that we could do some work on the things that we wanted to bring to this group. And that's how it evolved. It evolved into the New Witch Academy of Modern Magic, a new website. Seven Green Sisters is still out there, but it will go away. Jamie changed our YouTube channel from Seven Green Sisters to the New Witch Academy of Modern Magic, because our whole goal is education and helping people on their path,
helping new witches on their path,
answering questions. So we're going to cover, as you all know, tonight's subject is Book of Shadows, Book of Mirrors, and Grimoire. We're going to talk about that. But if you have questions about anything else, please feel free to enter those in the chat and we'll monitor that. And at the end, we will have a Q&A.
Go back through it.
So we'll answer your questions if you add them into the chat, or we'll answer them at the end, however you want to do that. So that being said,
I want to give a quick shout out, Marissa in Nashville. I was just up there. Joan's in Nashville. Maybe you guys could, hooray. Nashville was such a fun city. Loved going there. Thank you to Stephen for adding the website into the chat already. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You guys are so great. If you see a question and you can answer it and you want to, please feel free. This is all about learning. We are not like the know-all, be-all, end-all, anything. So whatever information you want to offer up to other members in the chat, we greatly appreciate it. And feel free to do so. We have lots of members who did that a couple months ago. We don't know who's going to be returning because our group is so large right now that we're not going to be able to see everybody on one screen. Because it says 47 people, but I can only see maybe 20. I don't know. It's several pages long. We're honored. We're so honored. And thank you guys for joining us. We feel blessed and we are so ready to help you in whatever you're looking for or need, if we know the answers, of course.
So
it's 7:06. We better start.
So we better get started because we have a lot to cover. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming here tonight and being with us First, I want to share with you the goal of this course. So this is a 13-week course. In case you don't know, we've only announced 4 meetings, but there will be 13 total, just because I like number 13. It's a good number.
It's a lucky number.
So the goal of the course is to provide knowledge about witchcraft from our perspective. Remember, every witch, we're solitary witches. There's not one book of witchcraft. There's all kinds of things that you can choose to practice as a witch. So we want to provide knowledge about witchcraft from our perspective, knowing that you can choose to take whatever, you can always choose to take whatever you want from our teachings, our information. We'd also like to give you a path if you're a very new witch and you're like, there's so much information out there. We'd really like to be able to give you a kind of a roadmap, if you will, that you can always veer off and go, as you start down this path, you'll discover new things and it might take you in a different direction.
Yes. I have an important additive because I love this. We've been around for 2 years now, and I've had members say to me, hey, sorry, I'm not at the meetings anymore, something happened, whatever. And I tell everybody, and I'll tell you now, if you find this helpful for 3 weeks and then you leave, that's okay. Great. If we are here to serve you in some way for a week, 2 weeks, 3, 13, 2 years, whatever it is, use us as stepping stones. That's what we expect to be. You're not going to be a new witch forever. You might get to a place where you really need to take a break, which is why all these videos are uploaded to YouTube, so you can come back if you ever miss anything. We don't want you to miss out on the meeting if you can't make it because life happens. We know how that goes. Yes. So remember, these are all posted to YouTube. Kat does that as well, and usually they're up by Wednesday-ish.
Yep, that's our promise.
If ever you can't get to a meeting, know that it's still on YouTube. I think we already mentioned the channel, but we'll make sure that it gets into the chat or we say it later again.
Okay.
The
last thing is we want you to feel like this is a safe place for you to ask questions.
Yes,
so as a new witch, you may have heard a lot of things and just don't know. There's no wrong questions here. So please feel free. Your information is protected. We don't post your name, your pictures, any of that, anything you say, none of that goes on in YouTube and the channel. It's just our presentation, which we call the lesson. So with that, I'm going to switch over to Jamie, and she is going to talk about
why people are coming to witchcraft in the first place. I just wanted to do this overview for people who are coming out of religions, or maybe they've been searching their whole life for a place they feel they can belong or connect to, and witchcraft happens to be one of those places. And if you haven't figured it out for yourself, I wanted to give you a couple reasons why this is happening and why you might connect with other people on this same path, whether you call yourself a witch or not, or you're practicing spirituality, because those two words for me are sort of the same. I was spiritual. I was afraid to call myself a witch in the beginning because of the connotations of it. And so here we are. All right. So, and I'm going to go off notes because Kat types them up so nice, and I'm much better at riffing than I am remembering. Okay, religion does not allow you to think. So if you want to be a free thinker, if you want to decide things for yourself, that is what witchcraft is. It's you always making the decisions. The religion of Wicca is different than being a solitary witch. It's still witchcraft, but when you join Wicca, you are enlisting to follow a certain set of rules. So that's a big thing between solitary witches, which is what we are. It means we choose what we do and how we do it. With Wicca, you're going to follow somebody else's rule book or set guidelines. In religions and breaking away from people, you're also told what to think, believe, and do. If you don't want to do that, if you're tired of being told what to think, what to do, and how to be, that is another thing that brings people to witchcraft, because they're looking for that personal freedom to feel connected in their own way. Witchcraft is very personal to each person that actually practices it, even if you're not, and practice just means you believe it and you set forth in the world with those beliefs. It doesn't mean that you have to do spells or rituals or stand in the full moon naked or anything like that. It's whatever you want it to be, which is that freedom that religion doesn't offer. In order to be in an organized place, you have to follow the organization's rules.
And I just want to add to that, we're not slamming religion,
No,
if anybody,
no,
because
no,
there
no.
are like Catholic witches,
No.
and I'm sure there are
Yeah,
other
Christian witches.
there
yeah.
are other witches that are follow their religion. We're not slamming religion, which is kind of an evolution for us, because I think early on we were like,
Early
F
on.
religion, they suck, you know, patriarchal, hierarchical, you know.
I don't
all
want to
this
be told
stuff.
what to do. I don't want to be told what to believe. I don't want to be told that there aren't answers for that. You just have to have faith. I don't want that. I want to feel the things that I feel, and I want to know that that's okay for me. So I've created my own, and that's what solitary witchcraft is you can all be a part of something as solitaries and believe in some of the same things and not others. And that is okay. Talk about your differences. We definitely don't want to draw a line between Christians and witches at all, ever, never. I think Christians are great people. I've met lots of them. I've been to churches before.
And even Wiccan, if you happen
Even
to be,
Wiccan?
and even if you happen to be
Yeah.
Wiccan,
There's nothing
where,
against
you know,
that.
you're welcome here. A lot of the beliefs I think that we subscribe to are also Wiccan beliefs. It's just that we're not in that, like, there's a coven, there's a high priestess, there's all this hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy to
And
it.
there's all
Yeah.
these rules, and we're like, yeah, we're not down with that. So just wanted to make that distinction, to just say, in case anybody here is following, is religious, some religion, whatever that may be, that's okay too. So,
And there's a similarity. The last thing I'm going to name is when you get into a religion, there is a very clear path of what you do and how you do it. And there's comfort in that. Sometimes being a solitary witch, or when you start your witchcraft journey, the hard part is knowing where to start. When you want to become people that I was very close with in South Carolina, they were all Southern Baptists. And I went to church with them all the time because I worked with all these people and I wanted to be with them. I just didn't buy into everything. So religion offers you a path where you don't have to do as much thinking, and you can follow something for a while until it doesn't feel right for you, or if it does, all the way feel right for you, and continue on with that. So getting into witchcraft is starting that free thinking for yourself first, and then deciding what feels right for you. If you want something outlined, that's definitely leaning towards the religion. If you really just want to try something one time and be like, oh, that's not for me, I don't want to do that. Groups of people, places, however you want to do it. I think witchcraft and freedom, they should be like next to each other in the dictionary, because that's really what it's about. Solitary witches are afforded the most freedom that you want. Like whatever it is you want, it's there. And then it's going over to
spirituality.
Oh, no.
So let's talk about spirituality.
Okay, so I do have a big story for you guys about how witchcraft came about, because it was not, it did not start out as spells in the old ways. There's a big split in human history where you have the pagan way of the way before Christianity, 2000 years ago. When you split from that and you had just the healers and the midwives and everybody who just knew how to use plants, and, women who didn't marry, maybe those were considered witches back in the day. And yet that's not what they called themselves. Witch just meant wise one. A pagan meant from the old country. It just meant that you weren't brought into a religion yet. So as Christianity came around and other religions, there was a separation of people who did things with the old gods versus the new God one, polytheistic versus monotheistic. With that, we had this awakening. Okay, if you've ever heard of, well, there's a name for it. Now I can't remember because I'm on the spot, of course. But it was a spirituality awakening. And so the word spirituality came about because people started to wonder how energy really flowed. This is like when electricity came around and there were things that people couldn't explain, but it worked in the world. Then people would die and seem to come back to life, or have movements, or their hair or nails would still grow. So the more that we built our scientific world, the more that we investigated the spirit world, meaning, does your body and your spirit live separate of each other? So that's where this word spirit came from. So spirituality started with things like, people were still religious, but they believed in spirits being able to live outside of the body and in some other place. That movement started 400 years ago, but really gained popularity about 200 years ago in the 1800s. And from that's when the esoteric and occult world sprang up, because from that world of mystery and shrouded secret discoveries and the unknown, people like Aleister Crowley and Gerald Gardner and other people that created Wicca and the Secret Dawn Society, they all started to separate themselves to really investigate and really invest in what is meditation? So they've traveled to India for 10 years and practiced with monks on meditation to figure out, does this bring us closer to talking to the other side? The whole goal was to see if they could talk to spirits. That's what spirituality started out as, which I love because we acknowledge the fact that energy does not die. They didn't know they were saying that. Energy doesn't die and it lives on through something else. So with spirituality became a cult, which then, of course, in the 1900s, we became witches, Wiccans, and that grew from there. And today's modern witches, we're just evolved from all of that, and we have more knowledge, and we're able to practice in freedom now that we never could before. I hope, did I cover all those points?
You did.
Okay,
and the only thing about, I would say, the human psyche, the study of psychology, and like.
So what goes along with that, everybody's heard the Book of Shadows, which we're going to go over, but with the Book of Shadows, that shadow term was only created in the last 100 years between Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. This is all psychology. As we're learning about the mind and whether we have conscious, unconscious, subconscious, the way that our brain operates in our mind. So brain is an organ, mind is an energy. And all of that has in turn created our practices as well. It's influenced us as witches, the things that we do, the way that we're willing to accept energy transfer between two people. Divination started in that we could receive from spirit, that we could hear things from the other side. All of that is just a couple hundred years old. And I think my whole point to this was, if you feel new and you don't know what you're doing, that is the club you're in. We are still evolving as a belief system or as an experience, because spirituality is an experience. It's not necessarily, they call it a cult because it is shrouded in secrecy. Nobody can really define what it is, and it's different for each person. That was my whole point to that.
Well, and I think the other thing about that is, we hear, Hollywood and books and things that are written about witchcraft. It's like, it's the witches of 400 years ago and how they had a grimoire and they wrote all their stuff down.
Oh man, no.
Yeah, well, you guys know that's bunk because people didn't even write back then. I mean, only rich people. There wasn't even paper, so there's no printing
literacy.
Presses. The literacy rate, yeah. So there's like literacy was. I mean, all of these things.
People didn't even read.
So a lot of times, what happens, I think, is like we watch these movies and we become like, we're supposed to like be for hereditary witch. Okay, that's somebody who can trace their lineage back to. Well, you guys know how dangerous it was to even claim to be a witch like 400 years ago. You already know that. So some of this stuff is like media generated. So just know, I guess, that this is new. And
on planet Earth, it's new on planet Earth.
It's new on planet Earth, and also that some of the things that you've been exposed to and taught to believe, or just whatever. It was like, yeah, okay,
it's a little fluff. It's a little fluff.
Take it with a grain of salt, right. Because in actuality, witches of 200 years ago, they didn't have a book that they wrote their spells in.
They did not write
because they didn't even have anything.
They didn't have books. It would have been illegal if they would have got caught. Gerald Gardner was the first person to create a book of shadows and publish it secretly within his group. Just so you guys know.
And that's in like the 40s, right?
I mean, 1918-ish, but
yes.
So he died in like 39, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm off a little bit, but yeah, so the 20th century.
It's just in the last 100 years. So I guess what I'm trying to do is relieve pressure for you guys to think that this is something of old. This is something that comes from long, long ago. And that's not really it. If you hear folk witchcraft or folk magic, when you hear the word folk, that means passed down mouth to mouth, normally in most circles. So folk magic is more of that. Rather than hereditary, folk would be the word to use for stories that are retold by mouth, changed over time. Big point then. The whole thing to this is that as you learn and grow for yourself and you create your own practice, you're doing exactly what all of the people before you did. Everybody before you did the same thing. They gained some knowledge, they tried some things, they found what worked for them, and they made that theirs. You can do the same thing. Own the things that you do, and it doesn't need to be approved by anybody else but you. You are the one that says yes. You are the authority figure in your spiritual practice, in your witchcraft practice. I made my point. Yes. Okay.
All right.
On to the lesson
Okay, so
Book of Shadows?
that was a lot of introduction. I hope you all found some of that helpful, like some
It
just
just spells
a
some
little
rumors.
bit of history
Yeah.
so that you don't feel like there's something that you're supposed to be doing that you're not doing, or you're not this, or you're not
missing.
no,
No judgment.
No, that's
Do
just,
it your way.
So our lesson tonight is about what is the difference between Book of Shadows, Book of Mirrors, and Grimoire. So the first one is Book of Shadows, and the term shadow self. So first of all, it's not true that witches had books of shadows because, as we already mentioned, witches of old did not even have books because, and if they did, it would have been, they didn't write and read, and it would have been extremely dangerous to have anything like that anyway. So the term shadow self, as Jamie mentioned, was created by Freud and Jung. And the shadow self is our subconscious and unconscious things that we do. Gerald Gardner created the first public book of shadows, introducing it in Wicca. And it was truly a grimoire. All of the religious practices, ceremonies, secrets, and hidden knowledge were contained in this book of shadows that Gerald Gardner published. I believe he published it. Yeah, first public book. So this is why Grimoire and Book of Shadows are interchangeable, and people don't know the difference. But the important thing, I think, so let's see, where was I? Whoops, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Because I know she really wants to tell you about the word grimoire and how it is not translatable from its original French word.
No, that's not what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
But thanks for trying to read my mind.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, Jamie's going to talk about grimoire. Because grimoire does have a different use than Book of Shadows, but your Book of Shadows, your Book of Mirrors in modern day, and modern witches have claimed Book of Shadows as their spiritual journey in reflections after doing spells and rituals. So it's your personal thoughts, feelings, and experiences of being a witch. So this is a story that I wanted to tell you. So 3 years ago, I'm a newer witch. Jamie's been practicing, we didn't mention this, but she's been practicing 25 years. I'm her mom. I came to Florida and got exposed to all of her witchy stuff, and her and my other daughter that were doing, rituals and celebrations and all that thing. And I was like, oh, wow. I left religion 20, 30 years ago because if anybody's been religion and you've walked away from it, you know why. I don't have to explain. I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't like rules. But anyway, the point that I want to make here is about the Book of Shadows, or your personal witch journal, or your journal, or whatever you choose to name this as you start on your path. This is what I want to stress. Start writing things down. I'm going to tell you from my own experience, I did not do that. And I've had such a transformation in the last 3 years. My daughter will tell me, and I can see for myself, I'm really different than when I came to Florida. And I wish that I had documented that so that I could go back and see for myself and read, how was I thinking 3 years ago? Because I'll tell you, it was not good. It was super negative. I used to say stuff like, I'm so stupid, shit like that, because I came from I would call it emotionally abusive and toxic relationship. That's why I decided to finally get the hell out of Kansas. But the important thing that I want to stress here for you as new witches is please start a journal of some kind. Please write things down, because it's going to be invaluable to you as you journey down this path. And then you're able to look back and see how much you've grown, because you will grow. You will change if you follow this path and, do things like come to our meetings and, learn and read books and share stories and meet other witches and talk to other witches and things like that. So that's the point I want to make. So Jamie is going to talk about grimoire.
So I do love the word grimoire. I just love the way it sounds, maybe because of Charmed and, I'm a kid of the 90s. I don't know. But when I first started as a witch, these things were not out in the public world. These were not words that I heard when I started in my witchcraft. Like I said, it was more about spirituality and doing spells and learning energy work. So with, of course, all of the social media and YouTube channels and the way people put things out there, and you have like trendy terms and trendy things to do, like spell bottles, love it all. Love it. I love how it's evolved. But it just wasn't something that I learned early on because there was nobody able to talk about it. There was no books out there. Llewellyn, as a publisher, was still pretty new and had a very limited space in the book world.
So everybody knows Llewellyn, just really quick.
Llewellyn, the publisher.
You
I
know,
hope
they
so.
publish all kinds of
A
stuff.
lot.
Okay.
Yeah. All of their
Thanks,
stuff is,
Stephen.
all their stuff is witch-y. Because some of it's not, I mean, they do Wiccan stuff as well. So it's whatever is in like the spiritual realm. But as a publisher, they were still very new. So a lot of the stuff that I got for information was printed off the internet because internet pages were new and had the dial-up thing. I don't know if anybody remembers dial-up, but that is where I got printed off pages of information because I sought knowledge so hard and there was nowhere to turn to find it. I had to find random ass web pages that people were trying to get their stuff out there, but it wasn't big yet. So I have the experience of learning witchcraft in the dark age, I would say, where nobody talked about it, nobody said it, and the word witch was bad. I mean, the only thing that was out was like The Craft, and we all know how that movie turned out. There's like one, I don't want to say good, but like The Natural Witch or whatever. So with that, Grimoire was this thing that was very elusive. You would have found it hidden in a basement from, the 1600s. Who knows where it came from? It had all these old spells and possibly with devil stuff, which everybody take your own belief on that, whether or not you think the devil as a character is real, exists, and has a place in the world. But I did not think that was a thing. So I had a lot of questions about Grimoire. When I learned about etymology, which is the history of words and where they come from, Grimoire itself is just a French word that doesn't really translate into anything other than grammar or writings. So it didn't have an actual witchy term. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy.
You can't Google translate grimoire from French to English. It doesn't. There's no translation.
No, it's an
I learned this.
I
learned this as I was putting this lesson together. I was really surprised because I really thought that
the
French word would translate to something,
yes.
And it does not.
If you guys don't know that tarot was a thing like in the 1400s, but tarot was a game just like cards are now, like normal playing cards. Tarot started as that. So, and this was in the Italian and French culture specifically. Any royal families had games that they could use to pass the time. So because it came from that time when people coming into the English language tried to bring in a word that meant something, grimoire was one of them, but it just meant secret writings to them. So you can find places that say, oh, absolutely, grimoire means like a book of magic to consort with the devil or something crazy, but it never translated. It just meant writings in a book because the word is so old and very few people did writings. Very few books were ever kept in the world. So grimoire.
So actually, I looked up when I was working on this lesson, I went to etymology.com and looked up grimoire, and it says, here's the description for you. Magician's Manual for Invoking Demons, 1849, from French grimoire, altered from grammaire, meaning incantation and grammar. Yeah. So, but today, a grimoire for you, and I think
modern words
for you, for a modern witch today, a grimoire would be where you, and I think you're going to cover this. I don't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. I love it. Reading minds. The grimoire of today for us, for modern witches, which is why we named the website Modern Magic, not like old or thinking that we're bringing in some kind of historical thing. No, this is all new revelations that we're creating right now for ourselves that work better. In modern terms, a grimoire is your book that you list out your correspondences, your days of the week, your colors, your candles, your herbs, whatever that is. It has the technical stuff, if that's the right word for it, the technical things that you've learned that you use.
And when you do a spell, you write it in there.
You write your spells in there. But it's not what happened with this spell. It's not what you experienced with this spell. It's not your feelings. That's all Book of Shadows. You may be wondering, why do we keep these two things different? Because witches can share their grimoire with each other. They can take their book with them places and talk about things or exchange ideas using their grimoire. Maybe you don't want to carry around your Book of Shadows that has your most personal, intimate information in it, where you're dogging people out or saying you wish you never did this, or your experiences, your true like secret thoughts in your Book of Shadows. With your grimoire, these are the things that you just use daily. It's a reference book. That's the best way to think about the modern grimoire today. It is your reference book. I can speak from a personal point that I love books so much. They're everywhere in my house. I read a lot. I love collecting them maybe. And I got so enthusiastic when everybody started printing witch books. I'm like, I'm buying all of them. Why not? I may not believe everything that's in them or like them all, but I love seeing them on my shelf. I love it. I love seeing witch on everything. I love seeing green witch on stuff. I love seeing the words. So I continue to buy books, but my grimoire of the things that I use is pretty small. I did bring examples for you guys because I make stuff my own. This is literally a $5 notebook from Walmart, and I just put a bunch of stickers and washi tape on it because that's what I do. And even inside, as I write stuff down, no, none of this is pretty. This is one from like 3 years ago. But all of my books are they're just literally notebooks from Walmart. I actually liked this one, so I didn't even cover it because it's green, and I consider myself closer to a green witch than anything else. But on my pages, as I do stuff, you can see I just draw things in here, and I'm like, I just want to spend time with my book. Why not? That is how I use a grimoire for me. I do have a really pretty one, but I haven't used it a ton yet.
This one's
This
beautiful.
is also from Walmart.
This is like
Wait,
so pretty.
it's so hard to see the design. Okay, my mom's like, you should have bought every single one of them.
I know, it's like beautiful. It feels really soft.
Just a notebook. I love the things that people make that look old and all cryptic and whatever special, but the things that are in the book is more special than the book that you buy.
Yeah, so you can actually buy like a
$5 notebook from Walmart.
Or you can spend $30 on Amazon and buy a whatever they call it, a book of shadows, a grimoire, or something. Leather bound with like little edges that are burned and stuff.
Super cute.
So it makes you feel like you're like this old witch of old. But remember, those old witches didn't have books because they didn't even know how to write.
Do what's right for you. Do it the way you want to do it.
But that doesn't mean you can't have that.
No,
if you dig that, go for it, man.
I just needed to write stuff down. So when I ran out of a book, I'm like, I'm always looking to see what else is out there because I write so much. It's not really feasible for me to spend $30 like every 6 months because I write too much in them. So
for those of you who are new, my daughter is also, and this handle is taken somewhere. I'm not going to tell you. It's going to be a surprise. My daughter is somewhere. My daughter is Nerdy Witch because she researches and reads everything. So I call her Nerdy Witch because this one is a fountain of she's just a well, a deep well that never ends of information because she reads it and remembers it. So I want her to tell you the story because we took the time to include it in this lesson tonight about how the witch hunts started, because we've talked about witches of old and how they did not have grimoires. They did not write things down. It was dangerous. If they could have done that, it would have been dangerous. So would you tell the story of how the witch hunts started?
Okay.
Because I think it's interesting. I don't know if anybody's ever heard this before. I had not.
Yeah. I would love to tell you guys and it's going to be loosely. So if anybody wants to fact check me. Just know that my dates are not burned into my head. I know the story more than I know like the actual particulars. But if anybody can remember that there is a King James Version Bible, because that exists, that King James, the first person, was due to marry somebody from another land to bring the countries together. And I want to say this is like 14 or 1500s. I'm pretty sure. Again, don't know, but I know definitely by the 1500s. In this time, his wife was sailing to the country that was going to become her home to bring these two countries together. And the ship was caught in a storm and it sank. King James heard that witches had possibly put a spell on the ship for it to sink because they didn't want to lose their countryside to
They didn't want the countries to be united.
Yeah, they didn't want them to be united because they knew they'd have to conform and like all the rules that might go along with that. So he heard that witches did this. They heard witches killed his new queen. All right, so this started an actual witch hunt that is nothing like what we had in America or which persisted for the next like 100 years in Europe. It actually started out very, very methodical. And King James was one of those people who would tell people, this is not how you know she's a witch. It's not a mark. It's not, burnt hair. It's not a mole on her breast or something weird. It's none of those things. And he wrote a book called Demonology, and that it specifically outlines some of the ways that you can identify whether a witch is working with the devil, because that was their main concern. They didn't care about women who were healers. They were worried about that people could actually consort with the devil and make things happen and like sell their soul somehow. I have lots of thoughts on that. But this is the King James Version Bible, same guy who created the whole hunt for witches because he thought they were trying to bring his kingdom down. It turned into something drastically different and horrible through many, many twisted men trying to gain control or get rid of people that were unprotected in their society, like older women who had already lost their husband and lived on the end of town, and people had to help take care of them. Long story, but that is why were we talking about that?
I just love the story. And
Yeah.
also, I want you to know that his book, which was published in 1590, is actually available on Amazon. It's
I don't
called
have it. I haven't read it.
Daemonology, and it's spelled
Demonology.
Daemonologie by King James.
And
Published King James 1, published in, and I looked it up. It was on Amazon.
it was on
So
Amazon. There
I
were several
just
versions.
so I have no idea what's in it. I can't even imagine how hard it is to read something from
Yes.
the 1600 almost. But okay, so that. Do you have anything else you want to add about Grimoire?
I mean, I had a thought and it's gone.
Okay, she'll come back to that if she remembers, because I want to move us along to the next. So we've covered Book of Shadows, Grimoire, and now we're going to talk about Book of Mirrors. So Book of Mirrors is actually a term that I heard like recently, probably in the last 3 months. I had never heard this before. I can't remember. I just came across it in some of my research or whatever. So I went in and, like dug into like, what does this mean? Because I'd never heard the term. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Book of Mirrors, but when you think about mirrors, it's reflection. So the purpose of the Book of Mirrors is to document your spiritual awakening. The entries should be a reflection of where you are along your journey. And these reflections become a mirror in which we can see ourselves more clearly as you document your journey. This sounds very much like the Book of Shadows, where you're writing things down, where I stress to you, like, start a journal. Please start a journal today. If you haven't started one already, please get into the habit of doing it. If you don't journal every day, that's okay. Sometimes I go back and journal like for the month and like just remember the big things that happen. But this is the Book of Mirrors is actually something where you write down, like an example might be today's September 12th. The moon is in Pisces. No,
Right
the
now?
moon, yeah,
That was
whatever.
our full moon.
The full moon is in Pisces, whatever the day, and then maybe it's something that you dreamt about, and maybe it's something that you connected from your dream. I'll tell you something really weird that happened the other day. So Jamie and I were here working yesterday. This is
Was
truly
it just
bizarre.
yesterday?
It was just yesterday, and
Time flies.
I was mixing up a drink for us, and I said, "What's the ratio of vodka to Kahlua?"
I used to be a bartender, so
because I was mixing us a
make
drink. I was like, "What's the ratio of vodka to Kahlua?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I was just reading something and it was about ratio." And I was like,
it was the word ratio. I was reading it when she said
"That's
it.
really weird." And then later on in the day, I was reading something like ratio came up. So for me, this is like 3 times, y'all, that ratio. And I never use that word. I don't ever use that word. So now I'm like, what's the universe trying to tell me? What's the message in here? Jamie, of course, did the numerology. Ratio. The word is the number 9.
It equals 9.
It equals 9,
Yeah.
which is completion. Anyway,
So it would be
back
something
to-
like that, where she would journal it and just reflect on the word ratio, what it means to her. It's a mathematical equation. It's literally about
it's
mixing
proportion,
two parts.
and it's also proportion.
Proportion
So that's
of
the other. That's the other. Synonym for that is proportion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I need to write that down because I feel like there's going to be a message that comes to me
or
that has something. I'm gonna. For me, like every time that when astrologers, if I'm following somebody and the astrologer's like, and this week, this is going to happen to you. Well, for me, it's always like 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. I am like never on time. I was probably late when I was born. I don't know. But anyway, back to the Book of Mirrors. So this is just a reflection. It's a daily, really short thing to like keep track of where you are, maybe keep track of your dreams. And so through reflection, we understand our strengths and deficiencies, and we can edit out behaviors and patterns so we can choose not to repeat them. We only know things are problems when we shed light on them.
I want to stress that. She said that very casually and quickly, but I want to stress that because I'm a psychology major. I know you guys will hear me say this and be tired of it. I don't work as a psych person, but I love to do work with people on their psyches. The only way that we can change our behaviors is if we acknowledge them, if we see them in action and we reflect on them, and then we realize how we want to change them or why we want to change them. Putting that why or something behind it that's the true driving force on changing our behaviors. And so if you have, this is normally a thing when people come to witchcraft, it's like you want something to change in your life, you need more positive energy, you want to get rid of people who do not suit you, relationships, family members, whatever it is, you're just really trying to clean up your soul a little bit or find a bigger connection with your soul. That's what witchcraft does for people. And part of that is the reflection on what have we experienced, what habits did we create, and the patterns that repeat in our life, like always choosing the wrong partner. I don't know how many
Is this where
people
Jamie's anecdote comes in?
I can totally see my anecdote now for this story on reflection, because I don't have these books for me anymore. I didn't know. Again, this is a modern term, a book of mirrors. All right, first off, mirrors were very expensive and they weren't made the way they are now and blah, blah, blah. So it's just a modern term. You can call your book whatever you want. You can call it like Book of Cosmic Knowledge, Book of Getting in Touch with My Soul, Spirit, higher, whatever you want. But for me, the way that I relate a book of mirrors is that when I was in bad relationships, I would always go through and like, I'm super freaking smart. How did I choose this bad person? Like, what? They were really good when I met them. I don't understand. Like, I'm cursed. At one point, I thought I was really cursed. I'd meet men when they're like really good and doing well in life and have great jobs. And then they just start to fail and like crumble and become
somebody that you would never date.
Never. Like embarrassed that I dated them. I'm like, what happened there? And it annoyed me so much because I always thought, like, you're smarter than that. You know not to date idiots. Like, I need mental stimuli anyway. So I knew they were smart at some point, but like, what happened? Through my reflection journals, I started pinpointing the patterns of, I actually did choose men that, even though they were good in their life at that time, I knew that I was smarter, or I knew I was better off in some way. Like, I knew that I had a leg up on them somehow. And I didn't realize I did that in the beginning.
It's her feminist mother. She can't help it.
So
I raised her to be,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I raised my kids, my girls especially, to be independent.
I mean, I joined the Navy at 18 and I knew I had my whole life in front of me and I was going to control everything that happened to me. Like, I was going to be the one in control in every situation. I needed that. And I didn't realize I chose men based on that behavior until I did the reflections. And now I'm married, yay, and chose somebody really good for me. But it was so hard to let go of that control. And I never knew that was a problem for me until I met somebody equally as strong, equally as everything. And then I had to start compromising. I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't like this. I don't have the upper hand somehow. It wasn't until that relationship that I realized all my other ones, I had the upper hand somehow, and I knew it. And so,
well, I just remember. So when COVID happened, Jamie lost her job because she was in a business that they went out and met with people.
I traveled to other countries. They teaching,
training. They were training and stuff. And so, of course, when COVID hit, all that stopped because there was no interacting in person anymore. And so she was like without a job. And I hope you don't mind me telling your story, but she really struggled because she didn't have her own money. And she's like, she was really freaking out there for a little while. It took her, it was a very huge adjustment for her to not be independent, even though she was married and, she trusted her husband, but just like letting go of that thing was like, you went through some shit for that.
So. Because I don't know how many people can feel this, but in your relationships, if you ever feel like I have my money and they have their money, but then we have our money. Okay, well, he had his money and we had our money and I had no money. I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm going to go work at Starbucks. I don't care what I have to do. I have to maintain some level of control over something bad happening to me. But that was where the reflection point said, oh, so you keep this level of control because you do think something bad will happen to you. That's a terrible way to go through life, always believing that you're waiting for something bad to happen and you need to be there to like catch yourself, that nobody else is going to be there for you.
It was about trust, finally like actually really trusting yourself, your husband, the universe, and all that.
All the things. Yeah. Okay.
So
small departure from the whole thing, but now y'all know my intimate story.
All right. So we did want to share some personal things about us so you guys could get to know us a little better because we're people just like you. We probably have a lot of the same problems you've had. I want to circle back and just wrap up what we talked about. So Book of Shadows is your personal thoughts, feelings, and experiences of a witch.
Yes.
Grimoire is your magical reference book. And your Book of Mirrors is reflections of your experiences in your daily life. And in these modern terms, these are all journals of some kind that help you grow through experience, reflection, and witchiness. So feel free to do whatever you feel, whatever resonates with you. You don't have to call it a grimoire. You don't have to call it a book of shadows. You don't have to call it book of mirrors, whatever. But please do get your pretty notebook.
Make it good for you, whatever that looks like.
Get something that makes you feel good and like invites you to write in it, and start kind of documenting your journey.
And if you like stickers and washi tape, I'm totally there with you.
So that is actually your homework for this week. You guys have homework. You didn't know when you were coming here to this class that you were going to get homework. Is to get a notebook and decorate it if you want, and name it if you desire it. And you can name it whatever you want. Like I said, it could be Book of Knowledge, Witch's Journal, Book of Cosmic Knowledge, Book of Universal Knowledge, or it can just be journal. Mine just is journal. It doesn't really have a name.
I don't call mine my grimoire or book of shadows either. It's my journal.
So some other things, I'd like to give you some prompts. I'd like to help you with some prompts for like thinking about how you can start if you're not at a place where you can start. So ideas for your journal, writing in your journal. Name your most emotional memories, whether good or bad, and list those out and write how it changed you for the better or the worse. So this is just some things that you can sit down when you've got some time for reflection, you got some quiet time, and you just sort of want to start this journey.
When you make time for that, because that's why we don't do it. We don't make the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's hard for me to write every day. I have
It's
to
hard for
admit,
me to write every day too, yeah.
I work and stuff, so a lot of times I'm going back. But when big things happen to me, I write them down, because when I finally let go of that guy back in Kansas City, that was like a 20-year toxic relationship. When I finally reached that point where I'm like, wow, I'm really done here. I had to journal about that, because that was a 20-year thing for me. So it was major. So your big moments can include relationship meetings or breakups, family relationships, big moves or changes in your life, job changes, financial losses, weight gains and losses, pets you've had and their effect on you, and what coincidences you may remember related to any of these experiences. So
I like the coincidences for the Book of Mirrors. Actually, I've always thought about writing down all of my coincidences, because I truly believe that's messages from the universe, and they happen for me so often that I'm grateful in the moment. But when people ask me, they're like, oh, so what do you have with blah blah blah, like, oh, on the spot, I've had lots of them, I gotta think of them now. I do wish that I would write them down when they happen, because some of them are truly amazing, and it's like watching one of those shows like Ancient Aliens, where they put everything together and they're like, how's this not proof aliens were here? And you're like, yeah, no, I see all of that now. And coincidences can be like that. Sometimes we're going, how do you ignore this? There's so many things, signs, whatever it is, leading you to that realization. That's the word I'm looking for. You don't have it yet. I was looking to you for the word. She's my dictionary when I lose my words. But
so the last thing I want to say is we will put together a overview of tonight's meeting lesson, the points that we made, some reference material, your homework, if you will. And we would like to send that to you in an email. We're going to create an email for this. And so if you will go to the New Witch Academy of Modern Magic and subscribe, we will put an email together. And then once you're on that list, even if you don't make it for the next 13 weeks, we'll include you in that list.